In this lesson, what we're going to tackle is moving the shop information that we're displaying in our shop page into its own reducer, the same way that we just did with our directory. So we want to move our shop.data.js into its own reducer rather than keep it on our shop page component, the way that we have in its internal state right now. Some of you might be wondering, in a traditional application, how is this data stored? Especially if this list of items grows beyond the maximum of 10 per category that we have. Well, a lot of the times it's actually stored on a backend. And on a backend, it's easier for them to put the new items and then have all the respective front-end applications, like a web application or a mobile application, pull in the data from the backend so that it's always consistent versus keeping this data on the front end. However, we won't be doing that in this lesson. We would do that in a future lesson on Firebase, in a more advanced Firebase section, just so you're familiar with the actual pattern of what it's like to pull that information into your shop component. But right now, there's a lot that we can still get out of keeping it on our front end, because there's a lot of additional Redux things that we can take advantage of that we'll cover in the next lesson. But in this lesson, simply the practice of putting our shop data inside of a reducer is still valuable. And I know we just did it with our directory, but as I mentioned, practice makes perfect. And there's going to be a couple things that we're going to do that'll get really interesting with the way that we're doing our shop data right now. So let's actually start. The first thing we need to do is add a new shop Redux folder. And inside, we need our shop.reducer.js and also our shop.selectors.js. We're also going to bring our shop data down from our component folder into our Redux folder. And then in our reducer, we're going to use it. So we're going to declare our initial state. And here we're going to say collections points to our shop data. So we have to import that in. And we'll say collections points to that array. And now, for our actual reducer function, we're going to say shop reducer equals a function that gets the state, which by default is initial state, as well as an action. And then we'll write our usual switch statement, but just like we did with our directory, because there's no modifications, we only have our default, which returns the state. And then we'll export out our shop reducer and pull it into our root reducer. So let's import in our shop reducer. And let's say shop points to shop reducer inside of our root reducer. So now that we have our root reducer set up with our shop reducer, we need to actually pull it into our shop component. So inside of our shop component, we know that we don't need shop data anymore, and we don't need the constructor. So we can actually switch our class component over to a functional component. And we know we'll be passing collections in. And let's just fix up our brackets here. And then we need to actually connect this new component now to our Redux. But before we do that, we also know that we need our selectors. So let's go to our new shop.selectors file. And let's bring in our create selector from reselect. And then first we'll declare our initial input selector, which is our select shop, which gets the state and returns state.shop. And then we'll have our select shop items, which will be equal to create selector, taking our select shop, and then with a function of shop.shop items. Let's go back to our shop component and pull in both the selector as well as connect. Redux, shop selector. We also need both connect and our create structured selector. So we need connect from React Redux and create structured selector from reselect. And now in our const map state to props, it will be create structured selector with collections going to our select shop item. Actually, this name is wrong. It's supposed to be select collections. I just realized that we actually named that incorrectly. So inside of our shop selectors, let's just fix up that naming and then change our component to be the right one. Point to the right thing. And then connect our map state to props in. And now let's see our shop component. Oh, reselect is spelled wrong. Reselect with an E. Cool, everything works. So as you saw, it's a lot, it's so many files, right? With React and Redux, it's always just getting used to making all the right files, right? Calling in the right libraries, setting up the right code. It's definitely something that needs a lot of practice. And the more practice we have, the better. But as you saw, even I stumble, right? Just keeping track mentally of all the things and the pieces and the moving parts that we need. It's always difficult once you do the first setup. But after that, we saw before how easy it was just to add new actions, pull in state, right? Once all of our correct components are connected to the state, it's just the initial setup is a little lengthier. So now that we have our shop component and we have it connected, let's start actually building our category pages. Because now we're able to leverage the collections that we've got stored on our Redux state.